Alright guys, so I'm sorry if this isn't that good. Like this is the first time I've really done something like this. I mean I've given speeches and stuff before, but it's like in class with like 20 people or whatever, like not really like a lot of people, like not like a potentially large audience or whatever. So if this isn't that good, then sorry I took your time or whatever. But um alright, so a little bit of background. Um, well, first of all, like part of the reason that this might be not that good is because the fact that I'm not the best public speaker. This is the first time I've done it. So, a little bit of background though. I kind of want to, like, I really want to be a preacher, and it was just kind of tough because of the public speaking issue or whatever. Um, and so I feel like God's just gonna give me the strength though, and I want to be able to overcome that anxiety or whatever that I have with public speaking and such because of Him, and plus like I just feel like I need to, and like I have to. So anyway, and after that I want to do some missionary work, such as like go in some, like maybe Africa or somewhere to like work in fighting against poverty and such, because that's just what gets me. But anyways, the other day I was listening to a song, and sometimes like I sit there and I just listen to the song, and Hillsong United, guys, they're my favorite like band of all time, musical. Oh my gosh, they're amazing, and their music just moves me so much. And sometimes, like the other day, like I was listening to a song, and I have a lot of their new stuff. Like I don't have all of their old stuff. Like I don't sit there and listen to the older stuff as much as the newer stuff. So I was sitting there listening to some of their newer stuff the other day, and I was walking around campus, right, and I was listening to a song, and it starts out, "Oh, you bring hope to the hopeless, light to those in darkness, and death to life." And there's no way I'm ever gonna sing that to you guys because I'm terrible at singing. But I was sitting there, and I was just like, just kind of rocking out, and playing like air guitar and all that kind of stuff. And I missed the meaning of the lyrics, and actually sometimes, like, I didn't even really know the lyrics. Like, I would hear them, but I wouldn't take them in, right? And so the other day I took them in for the first time, and I was like, wow, those are great lyrics. And I know they're just lyrics, but still, those are amazing lyrics. And I was like, God brings hope to the hopeless. I'm a hopeless person because I'm a mere man. Like, I'm a man, and I'm not perfect, and there's no way that I'm going to be perfect without the help of God. And through Jesus, He brings hope to the hopeless. And I think that's amazing. And just, He wants us. He wants us. And I think that's awesome. That perfect being wants us. Wants the imperfect. So then, the other day, when I was listening to the song, got to the part where it said, "He brings death to life." And, I thought about, obviously, Jesus coming back to life and, being resurrected. And I was just thinking about the awe factor of that. Like, how does that's so incredible. Like, God defies everything because He needs us. He wants us. So, the other day, like, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about the hopeless part, and I'm like, we really are. Like, I don't mean to be a downer, but we're pretty hopeless. Like, I sit there and I sin, I have no idea I'm sinning sometimes. I'm just like doing my thing and getting my sin on, and then all of a sudden, a little bit later, I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, I sinned pretty bad. And I don't even know. And then sometimes, I'm sitting there and I know I'm about to sin, but I do it anyway because, it's more fun. It's what I want. And it's not what my heart wants, but it's what Paul talks about with the fleshly desires. It's what the fleshly desire is. The fleshly desire is the sin. Immorality is a fleshly desire, an evil impulse. There's a Jewish term for that. It's like, I don't know, Yetzer Hara or something like that. I don't know. I read about it the other day, but I can't pronounce it. I don't know. But anyway, means evil impulse. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, wow, like, how do we get saved then if we are so hopeless? And then you look at Jesus, and that is how you get saved. And so I was thinking about this whole sin thing, and me and my friend were walking along one day, and we were just walking around campus, and he said, dude, I gotta tell you something. And I was like, alright, go for it. He said, you say the words like, and whatever all the time, just constantly. And he was like, you'll be saying a sentence, and you'll finish your sentence, and then you'll just add or whatever at the end of it, and you'll pollute the sentence. You'll kind of make it a little unclear what you're talking about. And there's no reason to put or whatever there. There's no reason for you to say There's no reason for you to say like, but you do it anyway. And I thought about that, and I was like, I kind of do the same thing with sinning. Like, there's no reason to really sin. I mean, I have all the reason in the world not to sin because, righteousness with God. But I do it anyway because I'm not God. I'm sorry. I keep saying and like and whatever, and I'm not really gonna worry about it right now. But I'm not God, and I'm going to sin because I'm not God. And I was sitting there talking, and I was trying to get through sentences without saying like, or whatever. And sometimes I would just plow right through the sentence. I'd be like, yeah, and then I'd be, what? I just said it. Oh my gosh. And then sometimes he would actually have to call me out and say, you just said it again, dude. And then sometimes I would be like trying to stop myself, and the difference is with that I would stop myself, but with sin I would just do it. I would just do it anyway, not really worried about it. And I think that's partly because we don't feel like God is right here. Or we'll say, I won't sin, I'll live righteously tomorrow. I'll do what I can to attain righteousness tomorrow. And what I don't really want to say, that the next sin that you commit, is going to be your last sin. But I'm saying, what if it is? Like, what if it is? And I don't really want to get into that right now. I just want to leave your thoughts there. But a lot of people sit there, and in our class we talk about Paul and his stance in the law, and we're like, Paul, if you don't know much about Paul, quick synopsis, he's a very complicated guy, but quick synopsis is that Paul, he was a Pharisaical Jew that followed Jewish law, and he claims to have done it perfectly. And one day, like, he's perfect in the Jewish law, and one day, he's on the road to Damascus, and he's actually he's been involved in persecuting Jews. And Jesus says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, Jesus comes down, reveals himself to Paul and says, whoa, 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 something more is needed. So Paul converts over to being a Christian, and he starts teaching the churches like, Corinth, and he never went to Rome, but he wrote to the Romans. He taught to the Thessalonians. He taught to the Galatians. He wrote to Philippi. He has 7 letters that are definitely Pauline. There's 6 other ones I'm not sure about. You got 1 Thessalonians is Pauline for sure, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Romans, Galatians, Philemon, and Philippians. But Paul, in these letters, he emphasizes justification by faith. He's saying faith in Jesus Christ. You're justified by that. And you're like sitting there, and a lot of people think, it seems to me that a lot of people are just like, justification by faith means all I gotta do is I gotta believe God, came in the form of a man, and Jesus died on the cross, saving me from my sins. That's not it. Yes, God did come into the earth in the form of a man named Jesus, and he had Jesus put his arms out like this, on the cross, and give himself for us, to drip his blood for us, and his heart stopped beating so that we can gain new life. And Paul says that you have to have this justification by faith, and you don't really need the works. Now, when he says works, he means Mosaic law, just like dietary laws and stuff that the Jews followed. And Paul says that those laws, the problem with those laws is that they are making Jews superior to the Gentiles, and they're keeping the Gentiles out of the covenant with God. But the covenant has been opened up through Jesus Christ. When Christ died on the cross, that covenant was opened up, and they can't be holding the Gentiles out any longer. So a lot of people are trying to come to grips with what Paul is saying. Some people think that there's no need to do any works, and a lot of people don't really know what qualifies as works either. But what Paul commands us to do is really, really interesting. Paul says that we should make ourselves a living sacrifice to God. Paul says that when we have faith in Christ, we are living a new life. We are walking in this newness of life, and there is no room for sin when you walk in the newness of life with Christ. So when you are truly with Christ, you're not going to want to do those sins. So that leaves me thinking, well, I thought I was with Christ, and I still want to sin. That's really hard. It's really hard. But I feel like one good positive thing that comes out of it is that in your heart you know that it's really bad. That you're not in a good place if you want to sin. So at least I've got that going. But what Paul says in Romans 8:28 actually really, really, really strikes me, because when people say you don't need works. I think you kind of do. I think works do kind of fit into the Pauline message. And what's interesting is that Paul, one of the Jewish laws is to not create a stumbling block for someone else who is walking in the path of Christ. Paul incorporates that message directly into the dietary laws. He says that that we should not impose these dietary laws because they are going to be a stumbling block for the Gentiles. The Gentiles are now in the covenant. The Jews also, they believe that you should not create a stumbling block for people in the covenant, and you should love people of the covenant. And what Paul is doing is that right there. He is loving people in the covenant by not creating a stumbling block in the covenant. The only difference is the Gentiles are now in the covenant because Christ opened it up to the Gentiles. It wasn't like Paul just made this up. It happened through Christ. And that's incredibly interesting that he incorporated that Mosaic law into his message, his new Pauline message. And I find it really interesting because there wouldn't be much reason for Paul to break away from the Mosaic law, because completely at least, because he kept it perfectly. Like, he kept the law perfectly, the Mosaic law, and so there would not be a whole lot of reason for Paul to break away. But he does, because Christ tells him there's something more. And in Romans 8:28, let me get back to it. Yes, in Romans 8:28, Paul says, this is something that Romans is really good. I really like it. A lot of people do. But this is a passage from 8:28 on to 8:39. I really like. And I'm going to read 8:28 to you. It says, "We know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose." What that means is, if you love God and you're working for God, you're doing things for the good of God, nothing but good can come out of that. No evil can come out of that. Everything we do for God is for good. We are called for his purpose. Jesus. God came in the form of Jesus. That means we have to live like Jesus, because Jesus saved us. Jesus is our example. Jesus, he was full of love. He had faith. He was faithful. Jesus went out there. He gave himself to everybody. He didn't say, this guy is an alcoholic, I'm not going to talk to him. This guy, oh man, he ain't wearing the right clothes today. He didn't say to the prostitute, he didn't say, you might have diseases. Ew. He didn't say that. He said, you know what? I'm going to open up to you guys. I'm going to give myself to you guys. Jesus is going to give himself to every sinner out there. Every imperfect person, Jesus is going to give himself to. God is going to give himself to every imperfect person. And I find that really, really interesting, actually. And I see this again in 1 John 3:16. It says, "We know love by this, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for one another. How does God's love abide in anyone who has the world's goods and sees a brother or sister in need and yet refuses to help?" The first time that passage really hit me, I was watching a Francis Chan video. That video had a picture in it, really moved me. about a girl. It's a video called Loving Like Christ. But the picture was about a girl who's malnutritioned. She fell en route to looking for the next meal, and she was dying. In the background there was a vulture getting ready to eat her, and that vulture was doing the same thing she was doing, trying to get another meal. The vulture was going to find its next meal, and she wasn't. She was the vulture's next meal. And in that video, it just sticks with me every time something bad happens to me. Every time something goes a little wrong, you know, every time I shut my hand in the door and I'm like, oh man, that hurt. That's a terrible thing to do. Or, you know, that messed my day up a little bit because my finger hurts a little bit. Every time that my computer is a little slow and I complain about it, and every single time that, you know, I complain because I don't have the food I want to eat here, because campus food is not very good here, I'm not gonna lie, but every time I complain about it, I think about what he says in that video. Francis Chan says, what do you think when you look at these pictures? Do you think, oh, I had a rough week too? Oh, I've got some financial troubles of my own. When you look at a guy you can see his ribs, and you see him dying there, do you think, oh, I had a rough week too? I'm having a rough life. I'm having a tough time. I'm doing pretty well right here. Like, I'm a skinny guy, but I'm not dying. I'm just naturally skinny. And what he's saying in this passage in 1 John 3:16 is, God laid his life down for us. God put himself on the cross. He died for us. And he's saved us. But if we, as people, don't love, if we don't love, then, I mean, look at this. I'm going to read it again. We know love by this, that he laid down his life, for his perfect life, he laid down for us. We ought to lay down our lives for one another. That means me, for, you know, anybody watching this. I ought to want to lay down my life for you. I should want to lay down my life for, you know, my family. I should want to lay down my life for my classmates, my friends, people who I don't even know in, like, Africa and, you know, wherever. I mean, anywhere. And then it goes on to say, how does God's love abide in anyone who has the world's goods and sees a brother or sister in need and yet refuses to help? Everybody has a need. You know, some people struggle with knowing what their purpose in life is. Some people struggle with, you know, finding another meal, like I've already mentioned. Some people struggle with things like family problems. You know, everybody has things that are bothering them, that hurt them. Some people feel lonely. Everybody has a need for love. And one thing that everybody can give is love. That's, you know, because God gave us. God introduced us to love with Jesus. And we have love because of God. And if we can't give it out, if we don't distribute that, we are in some trouble. We are in some trouble. We are up, out, without a creek. That is crooked. I mean, that just completely, if we don't give out love, we've completely screwed everything up. And I think that's just really, really, really interesting. That's all. We have one simple commandment that we have to fulfill. Actual two, but one of them is to love God. And to love God, you have to love others. And if you don't love others, you don't love God. Because God, He is the part of others. I want to go back to Romans for a moment. Because, like I said, I like Romans, I'm sorry. It says, Romans 8:37. Well, actually I'm going to read 29 through the end, but I'm going to focus on 37 to the end. So 29 starts, for those whom, Romans 8:29 by the way, guys. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn within a large family. And those whom he predestined, he also called, and those whom he called, he also justified, and those whom he justified, he also glorified. What then are we to say about these things? If God is for us, who is against us? He who did not withhold his own Son, but gave him up for all of us, will he not with him also give us everything else? Who will bring any charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Who is it to condemn? It is Christ Jesus who died, yes, who was raised, who is at the right hand of God, who indeed intercedes for us. Who will separate us from the love of Christ? Will hardship, distress, persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or peril, or sword? As it is written, for your sake we are being killed all day long, we are accounted as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. Nothing can keep you from the love of God. Nothing at all. And that He's gonna love you no matter what you do, no matter what life throws at you, no matter what situation you find yourself in. God's gonna love you. God's gonna give you a chance. And if God's gonna give us a chance, shouldn't we give him a chance? Shouldn't we say, you know what, you might have been in prison, you might have gone to prison because you stole a car or something, but I still love you anyway. Yeah, I don't like what you did. No, I don't like the act. I hate that act. But I still love you. I still want you. I still want to be a part of your life. Like, I still want to help you out. I want to bring you, because that's what love is. Bringing you to something better. And bringing something better, I don't know why I keep pointing up here, but bringing you something better, bringing them to Christ. Bringing somebody to Christ. That's what love is. And even if we don't do that, God still loves those people. Even if we fail, God still loves them. God still loves us if we fail. And I think what he really needs us to do is to say, before it's too late, he needs us to say to other people, I love you. And then show it, work it, do it. Go out there and do what you gotta do. You know, I mean, there's different things you can do. If you're passionate about, you know, different things, if you're passionate about sex trafficking, if you're passionate fighting against that, if you're passionate against fighting against poverty, if you're passionate about, you know, fighting whatever, racial inequality, educational inequality, you know, disease. I mean, whatever it is you're passionate about, do it out of love. You know, go at it out of love and work in the image of the guy who did this for you. The guy who sat there on the cross, put his arms out and said, you know, this is it. My life is gone. My human life means nothing. This life down here on earth doesn't mean a thing. I think that's what we really need to do. We need to realize that what we do here doesn't mean anything. You know, that the stuff that we do, it doesn't really mean anything because eternity is in heaven. The things that happen right here on this earth, the things we do, yeah, it'll get us there, so it means a little something, but in the grand scheme of things, you know, it doesn't mean all that much. So my question is, why spend this amount of time not doing what God calls us to do, spending this amount of time living in turmoil, as opposed to spending this amount of time doing what God calls us to do, and spending this amount of time living in heaven? Now, we can all do what God calls us to do. It's not really like you have to be a preacher. You don't have to go and help a kid halfway around the world. You could do something right here. If you're a doctor, you can help a guy by stopping his illness. If you're a politician, you could help out in numerous ways. Saving innocent lives from mass murder and things such as that. You can also help out as far as poverty. You could help out healthcare wise. You could do so much as a politician that it's almost unfathomable how much you could do. But most of us aren't quite qualified to do that. So you could be a teacher. You can make a huge difference in a kid's life by teaching, by simply going out there every day, getting in front of a classroom and caring about them. But if you don't do it out of love, if you don't do whatever you do out of love, then what are you doing? Like, why are you doing it? You gotta have a passion, you gotta have a love. And you can love people, like, you can love people, you can say you love people, but if what you're doing is not bringing them closer to or attempting to bring them closer to a relationship with Christ, do you really love them? Do you? I mean, that's the ultimate gift right there. When you're giving somebody to Christ, not only are you giving Christ what he wants, but you're giving them what they need, what they have to have. If you don't give them Christ, it's like taking away water from them. They're not gonna live very long without water. They'll last a little bit, then they'll be done. It'll be over for them, just like that. But with Christ, you can live in eternity, and you can live that eternity. You have choices. You could live that eternity with Christ. You can live that eternity in heaven, in peace, not having to be afflicted with anything. Thing is, God gave us everything we need. God doesn't shortchange us. See, everything we need came through Jesus. Everything that we need came through Jesus. Gave us love and faith. The two things that we really, really, really need came through Jesus. Now, a lot of times people say, God gives people what they need. Why do people go hungry? Why do people, not have water? That's our mistake. That's us making that mistake. God doesn't make that mistake. He makes us. He is over us. But we as human beings make that mistake. But the thing is, we don't have to keep making that mistake. We don't have to keep hurting other people. We don't have to. The thing is, God is challenging us right now. We're in a time where we really are struggling. We really have a lot of issues at hand, especially here in the United States. We're actually really panicking, and to be honest, a lot of us are living fairly comfortably. People in, Iraq, Iran, maybe not so much. People in Africa, people in, I don't know, some people probably in China. I mean, people everywhere have afflictions. Some people in places worse than others. And the thing is, if we don't give them what God gave us in love and faith, we can't give them anything. We can't give them water. We can't give them food. We can't give them the health care they need. We can't give them anything. We can't give them their education that they need. We can't give them the life that they deserve because we aren't giving them the love and faith that they deserve. God gave us love and faith. Do we deserve what God gave us? Absolutely not. But He gave it to us anyways. So how much of a crime would it be for us to withhold what God gave us, even though He gave it to us and we didn't deserve it? We didn't deserve a thing. God gave us everything. And the last thing is, we can't hold back what God gave us. We can't afford to hold back what God gave us. If we do, we're only going to have more and more and more trouble. Not only here, but after we're done here. But if just one of you gives what God gave us, if you give that out to other people and you give it to them, you are giving back to God. If you give it back to God, then you're going to not only make this world a better place. Now granted, it might not be all that much better because you're only one person. You're going to make the world a better place somehow, some way. And in that instant, God is going to say, you know what, I'm proud of you. And if you take one instant and you multiply that, God is going to be that much more happy with you. And we don't deserve God. God doesn't deserve to be treated the way He is by us. We still treat Him like crap sometimes. And it's really painful. It's painful to me when I treat Him like crap. when I see people treat him like crap, it's painful to me. I can't imagine how painful it is to him who is actually being treated like crap. And honestly, I think he's gonna stick it through, and he's gonna stay with us. He's not gonna, just because we treat him like crap, he's gonna say, I love you anyways. I love you anyways. I don't care if you treat me like crap. I love you anyway. And I think that's so amazing. And if we withhold God's love, we withhold his love, then what are we doing? What are we doing to ourselves? You have to ask yourself the question. Not only what are you doing to other people, not only what are you doing to yourself, what are you doing to God? What are you doing to God?